Happy birthday, America. I'm here to ruin your party. Oh, that actually worked pretty well. Because honestly, the American dream is dead. And I'm not talking about the American dream that we all know, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, having a nice, cute little nuclear family, and going to your corporate office to provide for your trad wife at home. That is not what I mean. Instead, I mean this story that leaders have been telling us about how afraid we need to be of everybody else in the entire rest of the world. And thanks to the World Cup, we are seeing deconstruction in real time. Americans are posting all over social media, shocked about how nice other people from other countries are, and finally starting to recognize maybe it isn't our neighbors to the north, south, east, and west. Maybe it's the leadership that has been indoctrinating us for years into believing that we need to be against everybody else. And this is exactly how most cults operate. So today we are going to dive into this deconstruction and explore how this massive unity all over the world is helping America for the better. Now, America may not have deserved to host the World Cup, but I think hosting the World Cup is really what America needed. So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I like to post something about one of these topics, or maybe even a controversy every single week. So if you are into this sort of thing, please stick around. I would love to have you subscribe and comment and join our little community. I'm just kidding. I don't like to say I don't like to say it like that, but come on, it's fun over here. Now, to be totally honest, I had a completely different idea for this episode before the World Cup. Now, I've talked about the cultic practices and beliefs of America. I will post that video here. And I've also talked about the MAGA cult. I'll post another clip here or shortly thereafter. And I was kind of going to do another kind of America exposed video. But after watching the World Cup and seeing how people are coming here and appreciating the culture, it's been so inspiring to me. And I thought, I don't really want to make another divisive video. I really want to talk about how this coming together, this exposure to people outside the American bubble is really changing how Americans are starting to see people, especially people who probably were against foreigners, immigrants, all of that. They're starting to realize, oh my gosh, a human being is a human being, which is like, you really needed help with that. But I think some of these people need help with that because of the constant indoctrination that American mainstream media specifically pushes down our throats constantly. So I want to dive into it, and I want to really break down not just the tactics that American leadership and probably leaders from all over the world, but today it's America specific. I want to talk about how we've been indoctrinated and have these internalized belief systems and how they came about, and now how we are starting to deconstruct those. So I am really, really excited about this video. Hopefully, it'll be a little more lighthearted than some of the things I've been covering these days. Because right now, in some stadium, there is an American wrapped in a Mexican flag, and on the other side of the stadium, the opposing team is sharing a chant, and the Americans who speak not a lick of that language are starting to share the chant too because it's just so exciting. These are people who were all complete strangers an hour ago, and now they're hugging because a ball went into the net. And they're not afraid of each other. I mean, these are stadiums of people from every corner of the earth. And the thing that is hitting us all isn't any tension, it's joy. Nobody's being talked into it. Nobody is handing out a leaflet explaining that the guy from Morocco is a person with a mother and a favorite breakfast. They just knew because that's the human's factory setting. Connection is what people do when no one is working to stop them from connecting. And the scale this year is almost hard to believe. 48 nations instead of the usual 32. Three countries hosting all at once for the first time ever: the US, Mexico, and Canada. And the whole top of the continent throwing one enormous party. More people through the gates than any World Cup that's ever been counted. Cities that spent most of the year being told to fear each other's countries are running welcome events in a dozen languages. And one of them up in Seattle created something literally called the Unity Loop. Nobody designed any of this as some kind of rebellion or rebuttal. It just kind of quietly happened, or I guess really loudly happened. But the question I really want to try to answer today is if that's what we are, a crowd of strangers where our default setting is hugging each other, then where does all the other stuff come from? It is the same playbook that every cult leader in history has used to turn a room of ordinary people into true believers who will cut off their own families to stay. And I have spent years on this channel trying to pull this playbook apart inside churches and communes and even pyramid schemes. And once you know the moves, you just can't stop seeing them, including when they're not just running 100 people in a compound, but a whole country from the biggest stages we've got. And these tactics aren't partisan and they aren't new. I mean, even salesmen and advertisers used softer versions of this to try to sell you something. The app you're watching this on runs on them because outrage and fear are what keeps your thumb moving and holds your attention. It's literally a human weakness. Because the truth of it is that cult leaders, they prey on that weakness. So if you've ever wondered how a normal person ends up in a cult, how some skeptic or a reasonable person walks into something that ends up causing them to move to a compound and or into a bunker, the answer tends to surprise people. And that's the first tactic that a cult leader or even a political one is going to use. They're going to tell you that they love you. They're going to exploit all your fears and your feelings of being alone or lost, just like we all feel at some point. And they're going to be thrilled that you walked into the same room as them. They're going to make you feel valuable. They're going to make you feel like people are listening to you. And that's exactly what we saw in the 2016 election. I mean, a lot of people were shocked in 2015 when Donald Trump truly started to rise up the ranks in the political atmosphere. But the thing is, he pandered to people who had felt like their voices hadn't been heard, no matter if those voices were screaming racist rhetoric from some field in Iowa, because Donald Trump made them feel special. And they hadn't felt special or seen or important in a long time. And he was able to prey upon that vulnerability and make them feel like they belonged, feel like they'd found their people. And that just creates this us versus them mentality. You fit in with me, not those people over there. And if you agree with anything those people over there say, then you are against me, someone who welcomed you and loved you. So why would you ever leave? And initially, this feeling feels incredible. And it was very intentional for it too. It's literally the same chemistry as falling in love with someone that's pointed at a whole group instead of just a singular person. And the thing is, people who fall into these groups or these insane radical beliefs are not idiots and they're not weak. They are just people who want to be seen, who want to belong, who want to be a part of something bigger. And someone like a political leader simply figured out how to turn that hunger into a leash. On a massive scale, politically in the United States, we had such a strong divide about 10 years ago. So the people who had been lost and felt unheard were finally found. Because the thing about these politicians, and it really doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. They don't want us to feel like regular citizens. They want us to feel special, like we really have a say. We're the real ones, the true heart of this nation. And all the other people on the other side of the political wall, especially if you were a Trump supporter in either election, all those other people on the other side, the elites, the coastal snobs, the outsiders, they're all sneering at you. But I see you. I've got you. You're the special ones. And together, we're something the rest of them will never understand. And scholars who study populism will tell you, quote, the real people versus the corrupt elite is the textbook opening move. It's love bombing with a flag on it. And it's really hard to wave off because a lot of it feels good and some of it is true. People do get looked down on. People are lonely and unseen and sold out by institutions that were supposed to show up for them but didn't. And this is on both sides of the political spectrum. This love bombing, this welcome into our side of the aisle works because it's aimed at a real pain point. And that's the part that nobody is really talking about or warns us about. It's the hook that goes in through something genuine. It's not stupidity that gets people, it's a real wound with a warm hand. And it brings me to the point that being intelligent isn't really protection from this. And that's a thing that people least want to hear because loneliness doesn't care about your IQ, grief doesn't check your degree. Cults actually prey upon the smartest people because they want to use them as resources. So the welcoming of these people goes for the soft part underneath the deep thinking because they're not actually caring about you or what you know. They want to exploit how you feel. So they're going to exploit any amount of loneliness, distrust, fear that you have because thinking is going to be secondary. It comes along afterwards, and then it builds this very sophisticated case for why you have to stay because your feelings led you there. So I know it's so easy to say people on that side of the aisle are stupid, people on this side of the aisle are more intelligent. And there is something to say about the education system here in the United States. We are woefully undereducated, but that is a conversation for a different day. I just want to make sure that we are all aware it does not matter how smart you think you are still susceptible to getting indoctrinated into a cult. America was literally built on this idea that we wanted to do things our own way, and then we created systems that we believed would allow the playing field to be pretty even because we wanted everybody to be free. But there's still an element of control that needs to be had with human beings, and that begs the question, are you ever truly free? In any society, there are going to be rules that we have to adhere to. But I think from its inception, America has always instilled in its citizens that this is the best place to be, that we are lucky, we escaped something bad, and the bad is out there across the ocean. Here in America, it is good. But as we started to build this nation, it became very clear that order was necessary. And as democracy progressed, we got to where we are today, where we have this two-party system and this idea that a single person can vote for change and truly make a difference. For the entirety of the lifespan of the United States of America, there has been this implication that the people who don't live here are not as good as us. So we already have this internalized us versus them mentality. I mean, I know growing up, I definitely thought America always makes the right choices. We always help. We are the model of what capitalism and a truly great country and society should be for the rest of the world. And they are all striving to be just like us, and they all wish they were us until I started to travel more and I realized there are some really interesting beliefs and cultures and practices, and it just seemed to open up my worldview. Now, a lot of people here in America don't get or haven't taken the opportunity to expand their worldview, whether it's they're only focusing on one type of mainstream media or they've never left their small hometown. There is certainly a discrepancy on what a lot of Americans are exposed to. We're not like Europe where we can jump on a weekend plane and take a holiday and jump into another country. I wish we could, but it's just really impossible for us. So, when we have this foundation that we are better than everybody else in the world, we also have this mentality that says, well, everybody wants to come here because we're the best in the world. But as time went on and we moved into the new millennium, it seemed that that dream was kind of starting to die. If you're a millennial like me, I'm sure you've recognized that it's really difficult to attain this vision of the American dream that we were brought up on. It simply seems like it's not attainable and honestly, like it doesn't really exist anymore. And maybe I've only noticed this over the last 10 to 15 years simply because of my age and how I've educated myself on the political spectrum and environment of the United States. It certainly seems that ever since 2015, things really changed. Now, this us versus them mentality doesn't just live between us and other countries in the idea that we are better than all of them and they all want to come here to make their lives better. There's also infighting here, and that is very much thanks to the political environment of the United States. Democracy itself kind of demands that we have different points of view than each other, and that is a good thing. But I think where things get really, really dicey is when either side is completely uncompromising and refuses to see another perspective. So, where we are now, and this is where we've been for the last at least decade, maybe even 15 years, is this intense division within the United States. We have one side of the lane saying everyone who lives outside of the United States is a threat. They're scary. They're here to kill us all and take all our jobs, and we need to get rid of them. And we have people on the other spectrum that are saying, let's welcome people. Let's create opportunities for people. Let's help people. But the people on this side of the lane are so ingrained in that us versus them mentality that they can't see the other perspective. We have become so blind as a society that we don't really know where this indoctrination from media and politicians end and where reality begins. Because if we really start to think about it and look back at the last 15 years, a lot of us are totally gobsmacked at how America got to where it is today. And that is because the very tactics that cult leaders use to control people are the very same tactics that politicians on either side of the aisle are using in order to maintain control and gain more support. And it all comes down to the us versus them mentality. This is a keystone in controlling people. And the function it really has is it instills a fear of somebody else. It instills a feeling of threat from somebody else. So, what starts to happen is not only do we have this us versus them mentality with we're the United States, we're better than everybody else, this elitist point of view over the entire world. But inside, we have that us versus them mentality. A politician standing on a podium and saying that there is an inherent threat to the country and that the opposing political party actually wants to support that threat is creating an us versus them mentality here in the United States. So not only do we have this us versus them mentality as America as a whole versus the entire world because we're better than them and we're putting ourselves up on a pedestal because we have so much opportunity. We also have infighting here where we have politicians trying to bring people together on their own side of the aisle and find a reason to absolutely hate everybody else, not just on the other side of our aisle, but everybody else in the world. And the only reason for that is control. Jason Stanley is a philosopher at Yale who actually wrote a book on how fascism works, and he really describes the core story better than anybody. The pitch, he says, is that a once great us had something precious and it got taken or stolen from a specific enemy, usually some minority group, sometimes another nation. So you make the in group feel like they've lost something. And that particular someone is holding the thing they lost. And that leader talking about how somebody else stole from all of us, well, they're holding the thing they lost. And it is a brilliant move because it converts a warm, proud in group atmosphere into an aggrieved one. Now you're not just a special person in the in crowd, you've been wronged. And wronged people will do things that proud people would never do. And the same story runs through the worst chapters in human history. Some version of it turns up every single time. We were great, we were pure, we were on top, and then they came and they took it, and everything you've lost is their fault. It barely matters whether any of it's true because it isn't really meant as an argument, it's just a permission slip. It hands a frightened, humiliated group of people something clean to point to, and then tells them the cruelest part isn't cruelty at all, it's justice. Kicking them out of the country, well, that's justice because they stole our jobs. That is a flip that is intentional from the leader. It changes that the aggressor or the oppressor is allowed to victimize themselves and then defend all of the dangerous ideology and actions that they take against their perceived enemy. So then comes the language, and the language is where it starts to get really dangerous because it starts really small and it's really polite. Those people, that element. But over time, the words that do the real work start creeping in. The ones that compare human beings to insects or floods or to diseases or infestations or to something that's poisoning the blood of the country. And honestly, people who study genocide will tell you that those exact metaphors are the reddest flag there is every single time in every country that it's ever happened. Because you just can't do monstrous things to human beings while you still picture them as human beings. So you have to change the picture first. You have to reduce a human being to vermin, essentially. And this works in tiny little increments. Why decent people kind of miss that it's happening because nobody hears the ugliest version of it on the very first day, just like nobody goes knocking on a cult's front door and asks to join. You hear something a little bit off and then you kind of let it go because, well, the rest of what that person said felt really true and right. And then the next thing is a little coarser, but you've already swallowed that last thing they said. So like it's just not so bad. It goes down a little bit easier. So bit by bit, the goalpost changes. The line of what's a normal thing to say out loud starts to get walked backwards until a sentence that would have stopped you cold 2 years ago now just sounds like somebody who isn't afraid to tell it straight. And the people around you who never kind of bought into this new ideology, the old friend or the sibling who kept their distance from it, all start looking naive to you or willfully blind or just part of the problem. And that's the first real tell long before anybody hates anybody. It's the circle of people whose judgment you trust has quietly begun to shrink. You start to self isolate without even realizing you're doing it. And then you start to only seek out those who have the same ideas as you. And this is honestly how the trick survives. Because honestly, it's not wrong to worry about your job. It's not hateful to think a country should know who's crossing at its borders. They're real and sometimes reasonable concerns that some decent people hold, and pretending that it's all bigotry is just its own kind of manipulation. But that's exactly the raw material the tactic feeds on. This culty playbook isn't inventing your anxiety, it literally is illuminating it. It takes a genuine worry that a lot of us might have and hands you a face to pin it on. It takes I'm struggling and rewrites it genuinely into, well, they did this to you. It's like a sleight of hand trick. The real problem gets aimed at a chosen person or type of person instead of the system itself. And we see this on either side of the political aisle. If people have a common enemy, they are more likely to come together against that common enemy. They are more likely to make emotion driven decisions because if someone is angry and fearful, those are the two emotions that run the show the best. You will see that cult leaders and politicians alike, they want to instill fear and anger into their constituents or followers because that means they are easier to control. And then if they want to really twist it around, they'll try to tell everybody else outside of that in group that they're the ones fearful and they're the ones wrong. So that makes you feel like all of your fear is actually awareness when it's not. But what we're starting to see now is this whole worldview beginning to shatter right there on our TVs. Because the guy from Morocco in the stands, well, our leadership would want a lot of Americans to see him as a threat, a faceless them instead of a human being. But then you're watching him buy a churro and completely lose his mind over a penalty kick exactly the way you would. The abstraction can't even survive the actual person. And that's why the whole machine depends on keeping them at a distance as a category. Because the instant it becomes a specific guy with a name and a family and a losing team, that us versus them spell is going to break. And a leader trying to hold a cracked, restless us together has one tool that never fails: give them somebody to be up against. So, why is fear specifically the emotion that a leader is going to want to evoke out of a follower? It's because of what fear does to your body. Your threat detection system is older and faster than the part of your brain that reasons. So, when you feel afraid, your attention and your blood route toward the fight or flight machinery and away from the slow, skeptical, weigh the evidence parts that are upstairs. And it's literally not a metaphor. It is how the brain triages a crisis. Fear literally makes you quicker to react and worse at thinking. And for most of human history, that trait has saved your life because when there is a bear, you don't want to be workshopping the nuance of the bear. But almost nothing that gets sold to you as a bear is a bear in our current political climate. When the alarm shrieks over and over for things that aren't actually about to eat you, we can't tell difference. It floods you with the same stress chemistry that tunnels your vision in the same way, and it burns through your patience in the same way. So if you live in that state long enough, it stops feeling like fear and just starts feeling like who you are. It becomes your new baseline. So you're quicker to anger, you're quicker to suspect a stranger, you're quicker to grab whatever simple answer makes that discomfort stop. So a person kept permanently a little bit afraid has quietly handed over the very tools they'd need to notice that it's being done to them on purpose. And a frightened population is an easy one to steer. Scared people don't want the complicated, honest answer. They want the simple protector who says he will make the bad thing go away. Fear switches off the exact machinery that would let a person spot the trick. It's the most efficient tool ever found for turning thinking smart citizens into some manageable crowd. And everybody in leadership knows what's going on because none of this is a modern discovery. Every single strongman who's ever taken over a country has ran the same play. They find the fear or they manufacture the fear, and then they stand up as the only wall between the people and the thing they dread. Emergencies are used precisely because they make people hand over what they'd otherwise guard with their life: their rights, their oversight, their willingness to give a neighbor the benefit of doubt. Nobody reads the fine print while the building is on fire, which is why, for a certain kind of leader, the building has to stay on fire somehow. If the flames ever actually went out, people might look around and start asking, well, who keeps handing out the matches? And when the fear starts to burn down on its own, the way it always tries to, something has to top it back up. A new menace, a new reason the thing you were finally calming down is about to be somehow worse than you were first told. And the timing of this all has a rhythm to it. So if you follow it, the alarms tend to get loudest right when people are the least distracted and most likely to start asking pointed questions about the person sounding them. and it proves nothing on their own. But once you've seen this rhythm a few times, it's hard to unsee it. I mean, think about all of the times it seems like we have been distracted from something like the Epstein files. And the cult version of this is where fear stops being a mood and becomes a lock. In a high control group, fear is what keeps you inside. Not bars, not walls, fear. Fear of what happens if you leave, fear that out there it's even worse, and fear that asking a question makes you a traitor. Fear that walking out means losing every person you love in one afternoon. The group teaches that doubt itself is the danger, that people asking questions are the enemy, and that the exit is where the monsters are. So you just stay in your bubble, you comply, and you tell yourself the whole time that it's your own free choice. You scale that up to an entire country, and the wiring is literally identical. It makes changing your mind or leaving your political party or crossing the aisle feel like the single most dangerous thing you could possibly do. And most people just won't do it because it's tied to your identity. And then we've come to the sunk cost fallacy. Because what if you do change your mind? If you did, then everything you've ever said out loud, every friend you've made inside this little group, every bridge you burned on the way in, all of it's literally all just sunk cost now. You gave up all of that. So walking away means you would have to admit that the entire investment was a mistake. And most people can't handle that on their own, let alone an entire country, an entire movement of people starting to recognize, like, wait, maybe it's not the human being or them that's the problem. Maybe it's the leadership itself. And I think that that is what's happening now because we are seeing hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world come together in real time and be joyous. And the thing is that joy and fear do not fit in the same body at the same moment, not even in the same room or the same stadium. And that's the real reason that fear mongers can't stand a genuine, unscripted, joyful crowd. Because a crowd full of joy and supporting each other and who want to unite with each other against a new enemy, which might be one singular person in power or a few people in power, it's literally ungovernable. And a crowd that isn't afraid of their leadership is going to look around and start asking questions, which is exactly what's happening now. And like I always say on this channel, you have to ask more questions. We have to ask not just ourselves questions, but the people around us questions because asking those hard questions triggers your critical thinking. So if you're looking around right now and you're watching any FIFA coverage and you're thinking, why have I like, I wanna be more like all of these people coming together. Why do I feel like that's so far away from where I am now? It's because you are trapped in a cage of your own making. It's because you are trapped in a cage that was instilled on you by the media that you're watching and the leaders that you're following. And it is okay to step outside that mold and start to realize that there is no them. We are all human beings. And when we come together in this way, life can be so much more beautiful. And once you're excited to engage with all of those people you are seeing coming together and leaving your own little bubble, you're going to start getting outside information, which is something maybe you've never ever had before. If you are stuck in this bubble, in this country that is constantly saying, they are all people that are A, not as good as America, and B, they all want to get inside America to mess with America and steal what's yours. Why would you ever go to those people for any insider information? But that is part of it, because if you were to get outside information, you would change your worldview. And heaven forbid you change your worldview inside of a machine that wants to keep you scared and fearful of ever leaving that machine. One honest conversation with the enemy, one fact from a trusted source, and everything would collapse. So what the leader's going to do is basically gaslight you until you stop seeking outside information because they don't know anything. Only what the leader says is true. I feel like I've been rambling. I've honestly been going really off script throughout this video, so I hope it's been easy to understand. I'll try to iron it out in the editing because I kind of feel like my thoughts have been all over the place. Usually I just sit and read the script, but today I just kept getting more and more and more ideas and more things that I wanted to talk about. And honestly, I had a totally different script set up for today's video, and then I kind of just abandoned that one because I'm just so inspired by the unity that the World Cup has been exposing Americans to. So, as much as our government and the media wants us to create a common enemy so they can grip our attention and sell us their newspapers and keep us separate, I really think that the unity that the World Cup has not just instilled in all of us, but kind of exposed a lot of Americans to, especially after the last few years. I mean, I know for several years I've wondered, man, I feel like we are the laughing stock of the world. Everybody hates Americans. And it really sucks because I'm not responsible for what's going on. I'll tell you that much. I did not vote for our current sitting president. And it's really discouraging because I love to celebrate other cultures and learn from different people and take in ideas that are different than mine. I think that's really the only way you can grow as a person. And I honestly have felt a lot of disdain towards America as a whole. I'm not particularly patriotic, and I haven't been for a really, really long time. I don't know if I've ever truly been a patriot, but it has been really cool to see people from all over the world come here and appreciate things like ranch dressing and celebrate the culture and say Americans are really kind, even in, southern states. I mean, still typically blue cities and red states, but even in red states, people are being really kind to our foreign visitors. And I think it's really starting to make all of us, both outside of America and inside of America, realize that we can coexist. And these arguments, this fighting, it's not between the individuals, it's not between the people, it's between the leadership. And the leadership has to be able to control the narrative. The leadership has to make sure that we are against another country, another state, another political party if they want our support and if they are able to control us. And we are, I think, are all waking up and saying, wait a minute, maybe America is pretty great. And also, so are all of these other people and these countries. And I want to get to know their culture more too. I think that the blindfolds are coming off for a lot of Americans. I think this is the beginning of the deconstruction for people who are ultra patriotic and think America can do no wrong and think that all foreigners are evil and that we need to like get them out of the country because they're here to steal our jobs. When really that's just simply not true. That's a fear narrative that is being pushed down our throats by people who want to stay in political power and just want to control us. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. I'm not even a sports person and I'm just now getting into soccer because of the unity. It's been so cool going to like a viewing party and sitting next to people who are rooting for a completely different team than you, from a completely different country than any of the teams playing. And we're all there coming together to just watch people kick balls around and get them into nets. And it's like so exciting. It's such a beautiful sport. And it honestly makes me wonder why soccer is not more of a popular sport in America before this. Like, we totally changed the word of the sport so we could do our own big sport. So we had our own thing, instead of this united, common thing that we can all enjoy that has the same language. We can all watch this game play out and nobody needs anything explained to them besides maybe what an offside is because I still don't get it. But it's been so, so, so beautiful to see. And I really hope that this is like the first, because oftentimes in deconstruction, People need a lot of questions to start waking up. People take a lot of time to get out of a tricky situation, get out of a cult, get out of a DV situation. It takes time. And maybe this World Cup is the first exposure that is starting to get people to start asking the right kinds of questions, to change their minds about people, to deconstruct this ideology that America is the best in the world, when really I think there's room for all of us to be great. There doesn't just have to be one. And I really am heartbroken over the state of our country and how it's been treated over the last 10 years, because I think if there is more unity, we can really do anything and we can save our resources in the world and da 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 da. Da. I could go on another rant. Um, Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you watching the World Cup? I feel like I kind of rambled. I literally stopped using my script scroller because I just kind of wanted to speak from the heart. So I hope that's okay today. My apologies if this video is really confusing or convoluted. I kept kind of veering off script and then coming back to it, and then I was like, but I want to talk about this now. So, I really appreciate it. Let me know if you like more off the cuff videos like this. I try to keep things pretty to the point and share my opinion at the end, but I don't know, guys. I'm just feeling a lot of positive energy, and I really hope that you are too, especially since we cover so much dark shit on this channel. So I just really appreciate you being here. Let me know if you like videos with this like more loosey-goosey style, and I just hope you have fun the rest of the summer watching the World Cup. Remember that these are all our neighbors, and yes, of course, we're going to have differences with our neighbors, but that doesn't mean any of us is wrong or evil or bad simply for living somewhere else and being different. I think those differences should be celebrated. So, with all that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me today, and stay safe out there. Always ask questions and always stay skeptical. I'll see you in my next video soon.